Hi, and welcome to another episode of Facts, Figures, and Fallacies from the Front Line. This is a podcast where we talk with business owners, and today we have Colby Moody here. He is the owner and founder of Revelation Power. This company is a solar and also now an electrical contracting company. So we're very excited to speak with him and get some updates on the solar industry and talk about Colby's journey as a business owner and some of the challenges and things that he's overcome. So Colby, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again. I think this is my second time on the podcast, so definitely appreciate y'all reaching out and inviting me back.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Last time we talked about the solar industry and some of the changes that were happening. So I guess starting there, how has everything been? I know there's been a lot to adapt to during this new administration. So how's the solar life treating you?
Yeah, so last time we talked, the big beautiful bill had just, I think, actually came out. We were all kind of preparing for what it was going to look like. I know y'all have been pushing real hard on the tax situation on it. Y'all have helped me tremendously. We have, I will say, over the past 2 to 3 months coming into this year has been a 180 in the solar industry compared to what I've seen over the past decade. We used to do primarily loans. Now it's, I would say, a 90% lease market. With the big beautiful bill, the tax credit has went away from the customer, the consumer itself. There is still tax rebates and credits out there available for businesses. So these lease companies are offering some pretty well incentives for the customer itself. It really depends on how the product is pushed, how it's taken well care of, I would say, to the customer. There's still a lot in the industry that's going out there trying to make the same amount of money they used to in the solar space. And that's not working well.
Right. So, Kobe, you said the incentives, the commercial incentives are still there, but not the residential. So it sounds like this is kind of a workaround for residential consumers still, correct?
Yes, it can be. And that's kind of the approach that they're taking. From the business standpoint, you can still get the 30%, and then they're able to claim depreciation over 5 years. So that's where the leases are bundling up. If they can run out and get 10 to 15 contracts in one subdivision, then they can bundle those up, claim depreciation over 5 years, and it also gives a 25-year warranty through a lease product for the customer. There's a lot of pros and cons to this situation for the consumer itself, but the way that it can be approached for each customer can be beneficial, and it can work out very well for customers. For instance, just in the DFW alone area, there's about 22,000 people in the past 6 months that their solar installer has went out of business. So they have to find someone to warranty their product if they do need any maintenance. And with these leases, they come with certified installers behind them that if something happens, they're the ones that's on the hook for the maintenance. They help take care of the customer for you.
Interesting.
So that's kind of a safeguard to the consumer, sounds like.
It definitely can be. Like I said, there is still installers and sales companies out there that are abusing this power. And it's just like any other industry. It definitely needs a little bit more regulation, but there's a lot of good that I see changing over this year. And I think that 2027, it's definitely going to see that the solar industry is making a turn for the better.
Okay.
Awesome.
And Kobe, can you talk a little bit about just your journey as an entrepreneur? What sparked this idea and how you've grown the business and even expanded into new business lines?
Yeah, so whenever I graduated high school, I eventually got into some college credits, learning about business. I knew that was the path I wanted to take. And honestly, I'm a hands-on person, so the quickest way I could do that was by going out and doing it. So I got my first project working, basically helping build homes when I was 18, and found the solar industry when I turned 19. So worked for a few other installers, learned the ins and outs of the business, studied every part of it I could. And once I felt like I was ready to take that jump and that leap of being a business owner, me and an ex-partner, we made that decision together. One of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I think that it's definitely it comes with its up and downs. There's definitely challenges, but they're worth it. The journey is amazing. It's my family's been along with the ride for me. But yeah, so I started my first business when I had just turned 21. That was called JC Solar out of Bowie, Texas. We did within 6 months of me, a partner, and a few other employees we brought on. We quickly hit $1 million within 6 months, and
Wow.
realized that it was a lot easier to do it once you know what you're doing. And so there was a lot of practice, a lot of studying, a lot of figuring out how to do stuff the wrong way first. And that the wrong way is the best lessons, in my opinion, because you only fail once if you're doing it correctly. And that's the biggest thing that I've noticed throughout my journey is through my failures. I've definitely figured out how to go about coming to the consumer differently, going to manufacturers, suppliers, going to trade shows, things like that. Just how I push myself over as a business owner has definitely changed over the past 2 to 3 years. And especially since I've started Revelation Power, we have, my passions have grown, the industry has changed, but I've also evolved as a person and a business owner.
Yeah. So we were curious about, like, with the changes over the past year or two, it seems, it's obvious that you've evolved the business too. You've branched out in a lot of new ways. You're doing some electrical contracting work as well. Is that right?
Yep.
So can you dive into just how you've had to navigate that and kind of adapt?
Yeah, so thankfully I've got a group of people around me that have had my back for over a decade now. The people that helped me build this thing are dear family to me. And the way that we have evolved is basically by taking the knowledge of the people that we have and pushing into the industry of the electrical contracting. All of our guys are certified. They all take passions in growing, not only for the business, but they grow for themselves as well. If something, God forbid, something happened to us, I want my guys to be able to go out and get a job anywhere because they've got the background they need. And so we really push for the regulations and certifications of making people better. And so with that being said, moving over into the electrical industry from the solar was a cakewalk, honestly, for us, because not only do we have guys that are already certified, but I've also got a master electrician and now partner, Brandon, that he's had an amazing background in the electrical industry. So going and getting builders, showing work and proving that we can do what we are set out to do has been honestly super easy. Now, the hard part that I've noticed is transitioning into making sure that the suppliers are there, figuring out how to quote jobs correctly, competing with the market as the market changes. I will say one of the biggest things we've been monitoring is copper prices. Most people that if they're about to wire a custom home, we used to be able to wire a custom home before pre-COVID for $4 a square foot. And, now we're getting into $6.50, $7 a foot, and copper prices are still continuing to go up by 18 to 22% a month. So we've seen a drastic increase in pricing over these past few months that is causing us to either eat cost or evolve and adapt. And that's been one of our biggest hurdles, I would say, in this recent transition. And then honestly, just changing marketing. I personally am not a big marketing guy. My wife runs most of my social media. I'm not very good at that stuff. But with that being said, AI has made it super easy for us. We've been taking some AI classes. We took one the other day that we can make social media posts, like 30 of them in 10 minutes. Like it completely transitioning the way we do business for the good and, for the bad a little bit as well. But with that being said, just transitioning into showing who we are, how to compete with other manufacturers to push our product, So we have a few ideas coming out this year. We just released our service idea. So we're actually servicing solar panels as well now too for these customers that we're calling the solar orphans. We're trying to give them a reason to enjoy their solar, make sure that it's working properly. Same for the electrical. We just released 2 new trucks that we're going to be out in the Parker County, Wise County area, and Pinto County doing everyday service calls. So, just making sure that everything's running smoothly, but one thing at a time.
Colby, have you looked into doing like a monthly subscription plan for solar or for electrical? Or maybe annual?
So we have, yes. So on our website, we actually have that option for people that are solar orphans or people that have homes that are older and having issues. We can come and do quarterly checks, monthly checks, yearly checks, however you feel, just to make sure that things are running smoothly.
Nice.
And as far as your supply chains, where are you getting most of your solar panels? Where do those come from?
So right now, since everything has changed over after December 31st of 2025, the domestic content rule hit where everything has to be made in America in order to be financed, basically. Finance companies are not touching anything that was from before the 31st. So I would say about 80% of the industry just dropped off. There's only 3 manufacturers in America that's making batteries or inverters now. That's Tesla, SolarEdge, and Enphase. And so really for us smaller businesses, we have to really be 2 to 3 weeks ahead in advance, making sure that we're catching up and making sure the material's there. If not, these bigger suppliers can come in, swoop, grab the material, and you're searching for it. So we've got about 6 different suppliers in the DFW area, 2 in Austin and 1 in Houston that we work with directly. And I'm on the phone. I've got guys on the phone with them weekly, just making sure that what we're forecasting is available and ready to go. So the supply and demand has been, supply honestly is lower, but the demand is just as high, if not higher, with the leases and the qualifications now to be able to push customers through.
Is there a requirement that the supplies are made in the USA 100%, or is there a certain percentage?
It's certain percentages. So different banks are going to require different ones. For instance, I've got a bank called Skylight Lending. We do a lot of work with these guys. They require 50% on their racking. So everything to put the material up, to bolt it to the roof, 100% on their batteries, things like that. So it really just depends on which material we're using there.
And so since that's new, how has that affected the cost?
Cost has went up by, it's went up about 30%, I would say.
Ooh.
So, and that's, we typically try to eat some of that for the customer. Our margins have dropped down a little bit on that. Mainly sales commissions have went down, but there's still enough meat on the bone for everybody to, have a successful business, to run it successfully, and still give the consumer a good product.
Good.
So Colby, obviously Revelation Power has great ratings. You can see great positive reviews. What are some of the ways that you build trust with your clients? You kind of have that community, relationship with them. Is that something that kind of came naturally to you? Did you have to work at that? What are some of your, I guess, secrets there, or any advice you can give in that way?
Honestly, just being genuine. We come with a no BS policy, is what we call it. We're gonna give you the meat and potatoes of the whole thing up front. We're not gonna come around and try to sell you something. We're gonna tell you what's wrong, and we're gonna give you a good, better, best option. Even if it's coming down to electrical, you've got some kind of issue with a light switch not working. We're not going to put you into some kind of contract you can't afford. We're going to make sure that we're not leaving you without power. We're going to take care of you the best way we can. And, with that being said, customers seem to open up a little bit better. We're not coming in with tricky sales tactics. If we come in and just tell you, listen, we can help you or we cannot help you, even the customers that we tend to not be able to help, the customers open up and still call us back in the future.
That's awesome. And then expanding into the general, like electrical contracting, I feel like that obviously will add some value too with your clients, right? So do you find that maybe someone where you were going to help them with solar has given you more work, for electrical, on the electrical side, whether it be residential or commercial?
Yeah, so we've actually had quite a bit of customers that have reached back out once we blasted that we've on Facebook that we've came out with the electrical projects. And so we've actually wired a few shops for people that we've built custom homes for. We've actually went back to some solar customers where we've added onto their system, added batteries, and the next thing you know, they're like, hey, can you come fix this light switch, or can you come add can you add an outlet out here from a hot tub, things like that, and it's just making sure that, again, back to that relationship with the customer. As long as we continue to have a good relationship, you never know how much more work in the future there is, and then that's kind of the gist of it there. And then, on the electrical side, we're doing residential mainly, but we've got in some commercial projects. We're currently helping a big builder in the Burleson area wire a 36,000 indoor pickleball court. Didn't know it was that big of a thing, but I guess it's blowing up. So I've been doing some research,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's definitely, I can't stop learning. That's my biggest thing so far is moving into this transition. I feel like I've been reading more books over the past 2 to 3 months than I have since high school. So
And when it comes to learning, how much learning from failure have you had to go through? Obviously when you're starting a business in those early stages, I'm sure there are some failures you encountered. Is there anything you could share that kind of you had to go through to get to take that next big step?
yeah, I mean, cash flow is one of the biggest things I would say that is hard to conquer as a small business. We've definitely had our fair shares of up and downs with that over the time. Yeah, I would say put as much back as possible. Try not to dip into your savings, but with those failures, it comes to one of the biggest failures I've had is where do I move the money? What do I do here? Do I open up another truck and bring on a few more employees here? Or do we open up a higher marketing scheme and move money this way? And I've made a few bad decisions in that way myself. And unfortunately, we have had to lay off a few people in the past just because we jumped on the gun too quick and then lost a contract. And so those are schemes that I've tried to learn on. It's not fun. I want to build a family here. I want to build a community to where the people that work here enjoy working here. They want to wear our product happily. And some of these other failures we've had, I would say one of the big one is just not keeping up with the market, getting too busy. I've actually lost money on a few jobs where we've went out, wasn't paying attention to price hikes, and next thing you know, we're spending an extra $2 to $3 grand on a battery that I didn't even put into commission to make that profit there. So again, research and studying the market 24/7. It's almost a full-time job, I would say.
And
Right.
Colby, you mentioned cash flow. In addition to cash flow, what other metrics are you looking at on a daily or a weekly basis?
So we use an app called Monday.com where I've integrated it with QuickBooks. So we build all kind of metrics based off of how many hours each guy's using. If they're making sure that they're covering their base rates. So our typical or per hour per electrician with a truck roll and everything. So we break it down all the way to each electrician, each truck, how much each one's putting out. But most of ours that we use is the basic stuff on QuickBooks. I would say QuickBooks has been amazing for us. I've been using it for over a decade with y'all. So basic cash flow metrics on there. There's a few other profit and loss statements we look at pretty regularly. Other than that, we just break it down per truck just to make sure that truck is always staying profitable.
And what would you say as far as future outlook for the solar industry? A lot of people, you hear arguments both sides. Solar's going away, solar's increasing, and maybe even talk a little bit about the difference in solar in the US versus solar in China. I know they've had significant growth in China and how we compare to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's a possibility of it ever going away. It's a necessity. The problem with it is I was just in a building show a few weeks ago, and they're estimating another 4,000 to 6,000 homes coming in between Tarrant County and Parker County with the new subdivisions going on Walsh Ranch. There's no possible way to create a grid without either raising rates to be able to charge more for customers. So we don't really want to be like California where we're paying 40, 50, 60 cents a watt for electricity. Mm-hmm. So the only way to do that is to have supplements. I'm not a very big person on wind. I know it works, but I'm also not big on solar farms. I think that, our nature, our ground should be, room for the area. I don't think that we should take up the ground. I think that the houses and shops and stuff like that are the easiest way to take care of it. I think residential solar is huge. And I think that there should be more incentives for the commercial industry to use their roofs and to help the community with more power and more storage banks. One thing that I've noticed that's big these days, and everyone talking about them on social media, is data centers. No one realizes how much power those data centers actually use. And in order to bring those data centers into small communities, we have to make sure there's enough power there. And I think that the U.S. is planning to open up some more incentives to go solar just because of how much it actually cost effective. It makes more sense to add solar to the market to make more power based on going and adding extra to the grid. It's just way too expensive to do that. I'm not saying it has to be done. Now, as for China, we've actually been doing some work in a few areas in the Philippines, helping with some designs and stuff down there. I'm not too familiar with the area in China. I know that they are growing and that they use a lot of electricity over there based off of how many people are per capita there. So solar is turning into a huge market for them. I wouldn't speak too much on it just because I'm not for sure. But I know that the Philippines has been doing tremendous work over there with batteries and solar. And, it's impressive getting to see communities that are unfortunate enough to never even see a light bulb come on. And next thing you know, they have solar power and batteries, giving them running water, giving them, lights in churches and schools and things like that. So we've been doing a lot of work trying to make sure that we can, just give back. So the other countries are not as fortunate as us to have that. And solar is a very, very cost-effective way for them to have electricity.
And do you have numbers on, in the US, what percentage of our electrical capacity is solar in 2025?
I do not. They fluctuate so much per state. The last big numbers that I've ever really pushed on and seen was during the freeze in 21 that everyone talks about in Texas. There was no grid presence there. Most people were for even 2 weeks. Windmills were not producing any electricity. And still there was a large portion of the state that was covered just by solar.
And kind of in closing, where do you feel like we're headed with the future? I know you said kind of what you're hoping or what you think makes sense with some of these, new subdivisions, some of these, especially in Texas with our like independent grid, having those extra ways to supplement power is important to you. But what do you think is realistic? Like, where are we headed?
I would say that I think solar is going to be on the rise. As for the electrical side of it, I mean, the amount of homes coming in is outrageous. Like they're slapping up homes way faster than they used to. And we've partnered with some great builders that have been giving us some insights on what they see and how buildings or homes are going up. And it's beyond crazy what is going into them nowadays. I will say that the code is getting a little bit tougher, which is good. Homes need to be built to a proper standard. And there's a lot of that going on outside city limits that's not, homes are not built like they used to be. I would say as for the future, we're going to see a lot more electrical contractors. We're going to start seeing a lot of solar companies actually get more regulated. And we're going to start seeing the industry get balanced out a little bit. So we're going to start seeing some pricing that you're going to be able to understand more. Whereas now you see people coming on Facebook and they're always asking, oh, well, I've seen Facebook or I've seen this television commercial where it was, for $1.99 a month, I could get one solar panel, or, there's all kinds of crazy things out there. And then they have some, random person knock their door that they're trying to charge them $70,000. Whereas I think that we're starting to see that fluctuate away. And this year we're going to start seeing it maybe even on shelves at Costco and Home Depots and things like that, to where it makes more sense for consumers to even possibly do it yourself or build your own system and have a certified installer come in, just as the electrical industry is. You know what I mean? Electricians work off the backs of people knowing what they need. If they want a home built, they typically come and say, this is what I want built. This is how I want you to wire it. And they can come in and say, this is code. This is what we need to do to make that happen for you. But in the solar industry, everyone's just trusting what's given, what they're being told. There's no state of this is how it's done. And that's why there's so many projects out there that they're not being finished. They're not working properly, or now they're solar orphans. And I think that we're going to start seeing that there's several companies out there, large companies included, and small companies like me, that do care about the consumer, and we do care about the way that our industry looks. And that's going to start fluctuating this year. Good.
And that's important too. You've got to trust your contractors. You want to do business with people you trust. So I think that's really important. Colby, just in conclusion, can you give us just your top tip for small business owners from your experience over the last 12, 15 years? What would you tell someone who's thinking about starting a small business or starting a small business? Number one thing they need to know.
Never afraid to get your hands dirty, and always build around you with good people.
Yep.
The most people you have around you that have your back and have your businesses back, pay them well, and they will take care of you.
Yep, I agree. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Colby.
All right. Well,
we'll have your information too. Go ahead and let us know how people can contact you, and then we'll also link it.
Okay. Yeah, you can reach us out to us at 940-366-3740. That'll come directly to us, or look us up at www.revelationpwr.com and send us some emails, anything like that. We'd be happy to take care of you and help you out and give you some free tips or anything like that.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Colby.